the city of St. Louis, you're listening to the Don't Push Pause podcast with your hosts, Justin Johnson and Lindsay Reber.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. We've got a good show for you today. Our main movie of discussion today will be Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger. The only Predator that matters in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, love Danny Glover in Predator too, but this is the only one that I really think of.
So we'll be talking about Predator, and then we'll go to our picks of the week. And what was your pick this week?
Death Becomes Her. Connected to Predator by having the same music coordinator, that being Alan Silvestri.
Wow. I always go for these easy ways to connect a movie.
I don't know. I don't know what my angle this time was, but I think because the music probably sticks out so much to me in Predator. And then when I looked that up and then was like, oh my God, this guy's done so many movies I love, actually.
Yeah. You always pick a more interesting way to connect the pick of the week.
What? No, yours are just as equally interesting.
Last week you did the casting director was your connection. This week I'm just like, Arnold Schwarzenegger was also in Twins. So I picked Twins for my pick of the week.
Twins is a great one to bring up.
It is. I think it's worth it.
Yeah. I think both Death Becomes Her and Twins are maybe films that people haven't seen.
Yeah, that is possible.
Yeah.
I'm always hoping that the picks of the week are something that someone hasn't seen or hasn't seen in a while. I hadn't watched Twins in 15 years.
I feel like our picks of the week are the movies that you, when video rentals existed, like the ones that you would see on the shelf and would recognize the cover, but maybe never actually watched.
Yeah. Sorry,
I can still remember what the cover of Twins looks like.
I just had a melancholy moment because you brought up video rentals.
Oh, I know. I remember when my dream was to own a video rental.
Yeah, I still have that dream.
Well, maybe that...
Even though it's not practical.
Maybe...
I'd stay open for 3 weeks.
Maybe this podcast will fund maybe our opening of that video rental eventually. And then after our picks of the week, what are we moving on to?
We always close out with our MurrayMoment, which, again, I never know what you're going to say about Bill Murray, which I always like the surprise.
It's always a little anxiety-inducing, but when I'm doing it, I'm always thinking about you, and I'm like, is Justin going to find this interesting? I really hope so this time.
I always find it interesting, and if I don't, I just cut around it.
Just cut it out
when I go to edit it. So.
Our Murray Moment's just literally just like a sound clip of Bill Murray, and that's it.
So I think there's a pretty fun show. I'm excited to talk about Predator. I watched this twice in the last few weeks.
Me too, actually.
Getting ready.
I feel like I've seen this movie so much though throughout my life that I could have not watched it and still talk about it.
I agree.
Yeah.
So before we start this off, I'd just throw out the reasons why we chose Predator in the first place. One being that this is, we kind of both talked about this last week, is a movie that really toes the line between being this total broed out big macho movie mixed with some real internal conflict and feelings amongst these macho men.
I love that aspect of it. It's kind of something that I wouldn't assume would happen in a movie like this, especially like a big budget action movie starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, for there to be any type of feeling or emotion or any depth, really. I mean, not to sound insulting, but just that's not what I would expect by a movie that's called Predator.
Yeah. And I always like to care about characters a little bit before they get killed off.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only reason you do. We'll also hit on Arnold as a lead actor and his role in this and kind of how we feel about that.
Yeah, because I think we're both in agreement. This is, at least, maybe not in like a cultural standpoint of like he's most known for as the Terminator, but we
Yeah.
both agree this is his, at least in our opinion, his best role, best
By
performance.
By far.
So we'll talk about why that is,
Mm-hmm.
or why we think that is.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll also talk a little bit about director John McTiernan, his contributions to the film, and a little bit about his career. But before we get into the Predator discussion, as always, if you can, in the event, I always worry that someone's going into this and they haven't seen the movie, if you can give us just a short summary on what this movie is about.
Of course I can. So with Predator, a team of muscle-bound military dudes on a mission in Central America find themselves being hunted by some unknown alien monster, human-like creature, that's picking them off one by one in the jungle.
Terrifying.
Pretty terrifying. I would probably get picked off. I would at least be like the third one.
Yeah.
I'd make it a second. I'd hide behind somebody.
Yeah.
Probably just run.
I don't know if I publicly want to say how I would react to the situation.
You know, one thing, spoiler alert here, but I do love that the only female character in this movie is actually like the one that makes it out.
Yeah.
I've always kind of loved that about this movie. It's because she's the most non-threatening of all of them.
It's because she doesn't pick up a gun.
She doesn't pick up a gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't.
Is there a hidden message that we just discovered right now?
We'll talk about it.
Whoa.
We'll talk about it. Well, before we kick off our discussion, we'll play a little clip from Predator here. Get us in the mood.
What is it? Billy. What the hell is wrong with you? There's something in those trees.
So the first thing I guess we should just talk about is Arnold.
He is the major selling point of this movie. He's on the movie cover. It's what you think of, aside from the Predator itself.
And I think with just every movie that he's in, you know, you're first and foremost, it's, at least for me, I'm going into this like I'm watching an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. I'm here to see Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Sure. But I think that with that, the thing about him, and kind of what I have often admired about him, is that he's kind of gone the whole gamut, even things that are completely ridiculous. And yes, you go into that knowing that this is Arnold Schwarzenegger portraying a man having a baby or a kindergarten teacher. These are things that we just... It's that whole willing suspension of disbelief thing. But I think that no matter what Arnold has done, he's always done it to the best of his ability. And I'll go on record. I don't think he's a bad actor. But I think that Predator is where he definitely excels, for sure.
Yeah, and like we said in the beginning, we both are in agreement. We think this is his best performance. I think a lot of that is due in the fact that this, I think, was the first movie that he's surrounded by good actors, good characters. I mean, other movies that he had done up until this point, there were the one-liners and it's him, just sort of this one figure, like against a bunch of people. And this one, I think he really has, he's a leader of the team. He's a leader of a team. That he has a little bit. He actually has to get into an actual character. But in a way, I don't know. At the same time, he's made these other figures come to life, like Terminator, Conan.
Sure. I think one thing, though, that differs in this movie is that, and this might seem completely superficial, is that everyone, for the most part, is on the same level, like, of physicality, like strength and macho-ness. So I think it kind of levels the playing field as far as that's concerned, as far as, like, a dude in charge, but he's like the main guy. He's
yeah,
the
it's a good
man.
point. Yeah, he's surrounded by
Like being muscle
people
bound is the norm.
of the same stature.
Yeah.
So it's that we're not relying on that being the surprise.
Exactly.
We're relying on his character, his acting.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think that he really does give a great performance in this, and I do think that to me, he plays the first part of the movie as the leader of the team, like I said before, but then we switch gears, and the second half of the movie is kind of like what we've come to love and expect is him against the Predator, and that's what I really love about this movie. I love that there's, it's a really good, solid 3-act film where we're introduced to these characters as they're getting picked off. We realize we learn who this Predator is and how there's a way to possibly stop it, and then there's like the final showdown, the sort of like high noon showdown between Arnold and the Predator.
I would say all of these 3 acts too are similar. Like the final third act is not quick. I would say like these are good lengthy sections.
But at the same time, too, it always feels like the movie, I think, has like a really brisk pace.
It does.
I really think this movie, because we are learning about the characters.
It's close to about 2 hours. It's not an hour and a half. It's like maybe like an hour 45 or an hour 50.
And I also like that Arnold in this movie, when he goes to make the decision that he's taking on the Predator and the Predator sees it as a one-on-one fight, we have that scene, but at the same time, this movie could have easily done this like 30-minute cat and mouse kind of thing, and it doesn't feel as cat and mousey as other thriller action type movies can go that route, and it can get a little bit exhausting. Or predictable. And yeah, this movie, it's still it was just like 30 years old, and it's still I can watch it and it feels pretty fresh. Even though a ton of movies have taken from this, and there's like 6 Predator movies now or something like that. But
one thing I would say about Arnold's performance too, and I think he uses this in every one of his movies that he's in, but I really appreciate his exaggerated facial expressions. And I think in Predator specifically, this really works because, I mean, you're confronted with this monster out in the middle of the jungle. I really appreciate, it sounds so silly, but what he does with his eyes. Like, he gets you can feel some emotion in those eyes. I'm not saying that
I don't know if I've ever looked at his eyes before.
Why am I the one that's looking at Arnold Schwarzenegger's eyes so intensely? I'm not sure. I do really appreciate, though, that he really does. It seems like that the man tries. He tries. He tries to evoke some emotion of the situation to the best of his ability that I think Arnold Schwarzenegger can. He goes as deep as he can.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think this movie, I think that he's a person who approaches the material and I think that he is someone that isn't given a lot of credit. I mean, he encompasses characters, and I think this is the first movie, because even like a movie like Commando, he's Commando or he's Terminator. Again, like, in this one, it's an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, but he is not the main, I mean, he's not, the movie's like this guy, this person.
Actually, it's interesting because when I think about like all of these movies that do like Commando or Conan or even Kindergarten Cop, he's Arnold Schwarzenegger, but
they're selling it as this, like Last Action Hero.
Yeah,
he portrays the title of the title role.
Yeah. He is this character, and I even though I am watching Arnold Schwarzenegger perform this role, I believe that he is that. There's not one part of me that doesn't think that he could be a kindergarten teacher in Kindergarten Cop.
Yeah.
Like I believe it. The way that he sells it, it works. And I don't know if that's just because I don't know if that's because of his Schwarzeneggerness, I don't know, or if he's just a great actor. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like I feel like, and I've watched pretty much all of his films, and I'm a big fan, and I do think that there's a lot of things that maybe people feel are like strikes, like the accent or like his physical prowess. It's, to me, those are all the things to me that's what makes him interesting.
Yeah.
That's what makes him different than like a Sylvester Stallone, or I personally, I've always loved the accent, in his movies. In ones where it masked a little bit, I'm not as into movies. But overall, yeah. Again, I think this is 100% an Arnold Schwarzenegger film, but one that he excels in, and one that, the movie's not totally on his shoulders, and I don't mean that in the bad way, but I think that there's, we have more of a movie, we have more of there's other things going on, there's other things at play that are as equally as interesting as his presence in the film.
And maybe part of that is due to John McTiernan's direction of this. You and I were kind of talking before about how this was his first big budget action film, and how he didn't really rely upon Arnold Schwarzenegger being the main focus of this movie, rather being an ensemble cast.
Yeah, I think this could easily have been a director taking Arnold Schwarzenegger and exploiting his physical prowess in a way. I mean, again, like these other films that he did, Conan, Terminator, Commando, I think that they're really good movies, but I feel like the directors
was using him for one purpose.
Right, they were like, this guy's big, he's he has such presence on the screen, and John McTiernan, who at this point really wasn't known as a big budget action filmmaker that he became, could easily said,
making this a Schwarzenegger movie.
Yeah, we could do that, but instead he brought in these people to surround Schwarzenegger that were equally as big as he was in physicality, and incorporated the Predator, which is presented as something bigger than him, more powerful than him, even though he ultimately is able to defeat him, at the end. But yeah, I think that was a, possibly could have been a risky move, but I think that the movie is directed so well, and McTiernan is a director who can handle action and characters and material, and I think that's why his films are some of the best action movies, because they have characters that you care about, but they also deliver this excitement that you want out of an action film.
Justin, I don't know if it's the direction of John McTiernan, or if it's the script itself, or if it's the actors, but this movie really is such an ensemble piece. And I think what makes it interesting from my perspective, especially as a woman, is like this can appear on the surface as just like a broed out gun movie, or just like broed out action movie, like with really no depth. And we kind of talked about this a little bit before, but there's so much depth actually in all of these characters. Now, it's not really like we have a bunch of characters like, talking all at once, or like sharing emotions at once. It's more of like this one-on-one, and it's not even with Arnold Schwarzenegger most times. I would say like the screen time is pretty shared, I would say, between everybody.
Yeah, it's like everyone is allowed their moment.
Yeah.
To
a couple moments, really. Is it Bill Duke?
Bill Duke.
Bill Duke is...
I could probably spend the whole
episode
talking about
I know
Bill
how much
Duke.
you love Bill Duke. I would even say like I would say the hardest of all of them would be Carl Weathers. I mean, maybe Arnold, but like a little bit Carl Weathers too. But everybody has their moments of showing their emotions, and it's not just a shoot 'em up thing. Like we've got Bill Duke and interacting with Jesse Ventura, and they're obviously old buds. And just kind of everybody interacting with each other on a very, like, it's stripped down past this is a military mission. It's stripped down past that. It is quickly becomes about survival, and quickly becomes about the very nature of like human existence, which is just like you were in survival mode and you are doing what you need to do, but there is emotion that naturally comes along with that.
Yeah, it goes beyond what I think a typical like military-based film does. One, especially once, like you said, once they realize they're dealing with something that's not part of their mission, like the mission is now out the window, and this is a fight against. They have to come together to figure out how to fight this creature that is unknown to them.
Sometimes I can't help but compare this movie. I don't think it's a strange comparison, but I can't help but compare this movie to Alien 2 or Aliens, in the sense that it is like a military sci-fi movie.
Yeah, I can feel that, yeah.
But one thing that I think, like, again, that is an action sci-fi movie that I feel like is based much more around Sigourney Weaver's character than Arnold Schwarzenegger's character in Predator, even though that has much more of an ensemble cast than the previous Alien. And I feel like where I was going with this is I feel like the heart or the emotional nature that could have existed between those characters in Aliens is actually what exists in Predator. And I feel like there is some real connection between these dudes, and like where I was saying before, like how it becomes a non-issue that everyone is like 200 plus pounds, like I can bench like a whole semi truck, like big dudes. It becomes a non-issue because everyone's the same. And what comes out is the extremely emotional nature that's very humanizing for these guys that kind of seem like, you know, not like your average human.
Yeah, actually, I like that you're bringing up Aliens, because I know we were in the beginning, we were kind of goofing about hidden messages with there only being one single female predator.
Yeah.
And that this is sort of the reverse in the way, in the sense that Sigourney Weaver was kind of treated like by the military dudes as she's not on their level, and in this film, the only female character, they're sort of, we're going to protect her, and we're going to, you know, you go run for help or safety, but ultimately the predator the predator could have killed the woman, but she's unarmed, and later on it's sort of suggested that these other guys, all they have to do is put down their guns, and the predator, it's not because she's a woman, but because she's not a threat, because she doesn't have a gun, and
which is so basic, right?
Right, yeah, and the fact that again, we go back to this fine line between these macho guys, like even at the end of the movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger challenges the predator, and the predator realizes that he's powerful. He takes off his mask. He wants to almost do this like a hand-on-hand brawling street fight. But I do think that there is maybe not a hidden message, but this idea that this man versus himself idea, theme of, again, if they would just let themselves appear weaker than the predator, maybe they would have gotten picked off. Yeah,
take a step back and realize, the only person that this predator is not going after is the woman, and has had ample opportunity to do that, and been, if it were anybody, everyone around her, people that were 2 feet away from her were getting picked off, but she was not. So like this basic idea of like, why not just thinking about why isn't that happening? Oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah, and there is I again feel what you're saying about there is these moments between these characters. It's like these macho guys, but they care for each other in some sort of, like an example I can think of is Bill Duke. He pulls out his knife, and we're seeing him pull out his knife, and it's already been presented that him and Carl Weathers' character kind of have this beef, and he pulls out his knife and he's like bringing it over to his shoulder, and he like sticks the knife down, and Carl Weathers turns around, and it's, you know, we now see that it was a scorpion on his shoulder. And Carl Weathers, there's this sort of like surprised look on his face, like, oh, you were actually helping me out.
Yeah.
And Bill Duke doesn't, it's like a weird exchange. It's like, again, like this macho exchange, but there's this sort of
understanding.
We're helping each other out. We care about each other in this situation because we have to work as a team.
We can't emote too much, but we know what's going on here.
And again, I think that is what makes the movie a little more compelling.
Everyone is scared out of their minds, but they're like trying to keep it together, but you see almost how they're trying to keep it together is almost how they're unraveling, and also they're undoing too. Yeah, and even there's the Billy character who has, is it his crucifix that he has? When he gets scared, he's this more of the spiritual person out of the group, and kind of seems like the more of the calm, badass kind of guy. But he even has his moment where they show that he's a little bit scared, like they're up against something that they're pretty unsure that they can conquer. Even in one of the most macho gun scenes, and this is early on in the film, when I think it's Bill Duke that first spots some weird camouflaged creature that is the predator in the woods and just starts like annihilating the woods with all the firepower he can, and then everybody in the group starts firing too. They don't even know what they're firing at, and it's this giant scene of so much gunpowder just like destroying all of the forest around them. And this is so macho and such a like gun like scene, but what makes it a little bit deeper is that when everyone runs out of ammo, you've got Bill Duke that's still firing that gun that has no ammo coming out of it, and it's almost like he is just like lost it.
Well, since you're bringing up Bill Duke, I didn't want to turn this into a Bill Duke discussion, but this is off topic. But
Bill Duke's great.
I do think, I don't know if it was Bill Duke's decision or if it was John McTiernan's decision or if it was written in the script like that, but the fact that he whispers nearly all of his dialogue is just, I think, was a phenomenal decision for this film. It just makes his character all the more threatening, like intimidating.
It's funny.
But he does lose in that scene. So
I get what you're saying, but I think he is one of the most vulnerable characters in this movie, to me, anyway.
He cares about the Jesse Ventura character. It's his friend. So when he loses it, it's like he's just completely, we see that he just lost one of his best friends. Yeah. But gosh, really everybody in this movie has their moment, and it is just so good. I enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm kind of always every time I watch it, as we might be watching it in the background right now, actually.
We could be.
Just everyone really does, like you said, have their emotional moment or moments where you feel some feelings for them, and maybe you don't know what their complete backstory is, but the way that their character is being portrayed or how they're interacting with other, these other macho bro dudes, you actually feel something.
I think overall, like we've said, it's an ensemble piece. I mean, up until we get to the end here with Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Predator. it's what keeps this movie going and keeps it interesting.
It's not to say it's not action packed. It is like you said before. It is. There's a lot of forward momentum, and there's a lot to keep this movie going. The music, everything keeps this movie moving forward. But what keeps you interested, I feel like, are the interactions between the characters.
Well, before we wrap up our talk on Predator, is there any other things we wanted to touch on?
I mean, I think one thing that shouldn't be forgotten are probably the special effects of the movie. For me, at the time in 1987, I mean, this is pretty good. I mean, am I wrong about that? I feel like it's pretty good. I think it still holds up. Maybe it could be done better, in this day and age. It could be done better.
Sure. Yeah, but I guess like for the time period, I mean, I certainly feel like, I don't know if I can I think this was the first movie that did like the infrared point of view effect, because I know a lot of movies did it,
which made it so much creepier, right?
Yeah.
We've had the killer vision, like the POV of like Halloween and Black Christmas, but like this is like infrared, like we're seeing not just the person, but we're seeing a person through like an animalistic way of like body heat. This is a living, breathing human. Kind of like breaks it down in a different way. Yeah,
and I do like that there's like this Predator is like has this chameleon effect where
it's camouflage.
Yeah, they can't actually. It has that weird where it's like it's mirrored image, or it's almost like watery image. And
that's where I think it still kind of works. And like I said, I'm sure it could be done better today, but the effects of that time, I don't think it looks dated or bad by any means at all. It feels pretty legit.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing in this that makes me feel like, okay, I can see the makeup. I can see the makeup line on the side of your face. Like there's nothing that's not really believable in this world, specifically where there is an unknown assailant. Seeing this weird, like you said, watery, mirrory image of an outline creature, it's disorienting by itself. So I think that kind of goes along with the whole effect of the jungle behind it. It kind of all works together.
For some reason, the scene that always, the effect scene always sticks with me is the Bill Duke like crazily stabbing that wild boar, thinking that it's the Predator, and he's just like relentless. And then they cut to the shot of it, and they're like, "You just killed a freaking pig."
Yeah.
We're
that's actually hard. That's the hardest scene for me. Actually, I can watch Bill Duke get his head blown off the whole time, but the boar scene,
right?
I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna put it on mute real quick, and I'm good.
There is something that, it's like violence on animals versus violence on humans. For us, always plays a little.
We talked about this as pet owners. It's like, I'm okay. I don't need to. I'm just gonna mute it.
Just please
mute it and look away.
Kill as many humans, but just let that dog get out of the scene alive.
Can the dog actually be the hero of the story? Thanks. But I think, getting back to the special effects, I think that it's something that shouldn't be forgotten about in this movie. And also to kind of bring up with that, not that it really matters with the final product, but just as an interesting tidbit, that the Predator that we see in the theatrical release was not the original like monster creation. It wasn't as threatening. I don't know. It was much more of like a slender kind of like not as physically dominating, and also this could have a little bit something to do with might be a little extra throw in here as the actor that was that played the Predator. His name is escaping me.
Oh, I know. This is something that you probably don't know about me.
Oh man, what is it?
I don't think.
I mean, I know what other movie
I don't
he's
think
been
we've
in
ever
that I love.
discussed Jean-Claude Van Damme.
I mean, no. Jean-Claude Van Damme was supposed to be in it.
No, I think he worked for like 2 days and then
he
he
did.
quit. Yeah,
he did because the costume was too much.
See, I thought that's who
It was
you're
too
talking.
much.
That's because I don't. This is something we probably have never discussed. I own almost every Jean-Claude Van. I'm like a very.
Whoa, I had no idea.
Yeah, does that change your feelings about?
It doesn't
wanting to
change
do
my
this
feelings
podcast?
at all. I've seen Time Cop a lot.
Okay, I love Time Cop.
Yeah, Time Cop's great. I had a crush on Mia Sara, but I mean that's an aside that has nothing to do with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
So who is the actor that? See, that's where I thought this was going. Now I'm.
Well,
What are you typing
it's
over
like
there?
a 3. Oh man, the guy. Okay, there we go. It was a 3-name actor, and I knew the first name.
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
It was not Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah, he worked, but okay, so he worked for like a couple days. It was like not having his face shown, and he didn't really like the fact that he was like in a costume that was like making him pass out.
Oh, okay.
So he was not down with it. So, and I don't know if that was with the new Predator costume or if that was like the original Predator outfit.
Okay.
But the guy that eventually did play the Predator was a guy named Kevin Peter Hall.
Okay, I didn't know this.
Who's like,
I don't know who that is.
well, let me tell you another movie he was in.
Okay.
He is a very tall gentleman. I don't know how tall he is, but I can find out. He was also in a little movie called Harry and the Hendersons.
Oh, okay.
And
All
you
right.
might recall how tall Harry was in that movie too. So Kevin Peter Hall is actually 7'3".
Dang.
So
That's a foot taller than me.
I know, and you're a tall brute, sir.
Yeah.
You are. Just imagine your height with my 5'4"-ness, and you can. It's basically the Predator and Arnold Schwarzenegger right now. But this dude had more than a foot on him. So the only person that you can have tower over Arnold Schwarzenegger is this guy who was just coming off Harry and the Hendersons, and who, as I read, was like actually really looking to like look for an action role, and so it's kind of up his alley.
Wow. I'd never knew. You know what? To be honest, my history of who played the Predator stopped after Jean-Claude Van Damme got fired or quit the movie.
You're like, Van Damme didn't do it? I'm not interested.
So
Whoever.
let's give this guy, what's his name again? I'm sorry.
Kevin Peter Hall.
Kevin Peter Hall. And that'd be kind of wild. You're coming off Harry and the Hendersons and then going directly into the Predator.
I mean, what a thing. Like, actually, both of those movies, I would say, I've had history with. I grew up with both of those movies.
What became of him after Predator? Not to get too far down the rabbit hole, but
well, actually, he did pass away.
Oh. This took a morbid.
I know. He passed away in 1991.
That was a long time. Wow. So that was like 6 years after Predator.
Not too much longer after that. Looks like this beautiful looking gentleman did pass away of AIDS-related pneumonia, but he was a pretty successful actor during his time. He did appear in Big Top Pee-wee, and he did have a guest spot on Star Trek The Next Generation. So, you know what? That guy, I think he brought home some bucks a little bit.
Yeah.
So, good for him.
Well,
R.I.P. Kevin Peter Hall. You did a great job. And you played the Predator with elegance that I respect Jean-Claude Van Damme. But there is a certain nuance that came with that Predator. Of taking off that mask when he starts taking it off. But there's still, underneath that, there is still a body like performing these actions, right? So whether you have like tiny strings that are pulling your costume to make it look like your eyebrows are raising or whatever it is, you're still the physical body that's making all of this believable
Yeah.
and making it happen. And for a movie like Predator, that is incredibly interactive and physical.
Because I wonder now, would they even use a costume? Would it just? Well, actually, there is a new Predator movie coming out.
Yeah, this year.
But I wonder, I wonder if these last Predator movies, if it was just all CGI, or if there's actually some person that's doing the movements of the.
You mean like a Avatar effect, like a costume with?
Or
like,
if someone actually like, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, because my heart and soul is still in the. I'm gonna believe a costume that's made, it's handcrafted by someone, way more than I'm gonna believe CGI.
Sure. And I can't really say much for these. I haven't seen all these other Predator movies. I will say for this new one that's coming out, the only thing that is of interest of me is it's a return to writing for one of our faves,
Shane Black
and Fred Dekker.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know. I'll probably go see it because
we should go see it together.
Yeah. But my hopes are. It's hard.
Who
It's hard,
knows?
but I won't get
Who
into a
knows,
whole
though?
like remake
So
deal.
Maybe around the time of when this comes out, you'll have a little report on the a little aside, because we love Fred Dekker and Shane Black.
Yeah, we'll
on the new Predator.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
I'll watch it.
We're gonna go see it.
We'll watch it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, is there anything else we want to talk about with Predator? I think it's time to move on to our.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of bases here.
Let's move on to our pick of the week, and you chose Death Becomes Her, correct?
I did. Yes. So Death Becomes Her is connected to Predator by way of Alan Silvestri, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, who did the music for both films. And I feel like the music is such an important character in both Predator and Death Becomes Her. It really helps push the dramatically emotional scenes along with such great speed. Now, with Death Becomes Her, it couldn't be further away from Predator. It was directed by Robert Zemeckis and stars Meryl Streep, Goldie Hawn, and the well-known action star in an almost unrecognizable role, that being Bruce Willis. The general plot is two lifelong jealous friends who have continually and equally screwed each other over. Both happen to, at separate times in life, take in a potion that will make them live forever. This isn't a drama, it's not an action movie, but it does tend to be overly dramatic in an incredibly dark, comedic way in regard to death and superficiality, and also happened to be pretty staggering at the time for its special effects. It actually beat out Batman Returns and Alien 3 to nab the Oscar for Best Special Effects the year that it was released. Remembering that this happened, and I actually did go see this movie in the theater, it's also worth mentioning that Meryl Streep loved the final cut of the film, but she was not stoked about the technical aspects and use of special effects, often finding it tedious and hard to keep up the comedic momentum, that being like moving forward, and finding that she had to pay attention to the minute detail and technical aspects because of something related to the special effects that would be added later. Now, like Predator, Silvestri's musical score amps up the film so much. It's theatrical, over the top, following the action as it happens, almost like it's toying with the audience. I'd also liken it to Predator in the sense that it's very fun and makes the action sequences that much more enjoyable to watch. Ever since I first saw this film, I've always found Death Becomes Her to be endlessly entertaining. It's filled with such sassy and cutting humor. I know Goldie Hawn has always been a master of comedy, but I'd also like to add that Meryl Streep's comedic timing is completely impeccable. It's always fun seeing renowned actors in extremely dramatic comedic roles that are over the top, and it makes for something that's truly unforgettable, in my opinion. When's the last time you saw that movie, or have you seen that movie, Justin?
I swear, every single one of your picks of the week are like a movie that I haven't seen in like forever, and then I end up watching them. So I haven't seen that movie probably since who knows, like a year after it came out.
I just showed it to a friend of mine and was remarking on how the green screen effects in it were really like, now by today's standards it's like yeah, got that in the bag. But at the time, these things were like, oh my god, how did they make Meryl Streep's neck look like it was made of rubber? How did they shoot a whole scene where like you can see through Goldie Hawn's stomach? Just all of these things that seem so simple now. But what is this, 93? So like over 20 years later, it's like, meh, old hand. All right, Justin, your turn. Tell me about your pick of the week.
So, as I said before, my pick of the week is Twins, also an Arnold Schwarzenegger film. But it was Arnold Schwarzenegger's first hand at comedy. It was also he only really did 3 comedy films, all of which are directed by Ivan Reitman, Twins being their first pairing together. And Twins, it's one of those movies that, as I always talk about movies being like, did they stand the test of time? And this is one where it's sort of middle road. It hasn't really held up as well as like I hadn't watched it in a while, and but it is a fun film. It's a goofy concept. Arnold Schwarzenegger's character is sort of this experiment to create like a perfect specimen, and inevitably there's twins that are produced. Danny DeVito's character being sort of like the complete opposite of like this genetic miracle, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, for whatever reason, has been living in this sort of serene Garden of Eden life that he's grown up in, and Danny DeVito was passed around through orphanages and started leading a life of crime. And Arnold Schwarzenegger finds out he has this twin brother, so why not? He wants to go find out who his brother is, and when they meet up, they decide to find out who their birth mother was. So it sort of kicks off in this sort of mini goofball road trip, but it really is Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't think he's ever played a character like this. Even though he did comedies like Kindergarten Cop and Junior, he plays this with this sort of like innocence, and he almost plays it like he's still a little kid. It's a very odd performance, but it's one that I really do think is great, and they do use his size for humor, in goofball ways, like putting on a t-shirt and it like rips. But in Danny DeVito doing what he does best, his sort of like sleazy car salesman, used car salesman vibe that he always has. But I think it's a really good pairing. I think that they play off each other really well. And again, it's not a movie to me that's really stood the test of time, but I still think it's one of those perfect, it's Saturday or Sunday afternoon. I want to hit up something that's just going to make me feel good and relax, and yeah, just kick back and watch some Twins. So that's my pick of the week.
I have to say it's been a while since I've revisited Twins, but I know that every time I have the complete absurdity of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito being twins is enough to take me in, really. There's just so much to keep you hooked on that movie, actually, no matter if it stands the test of time or not. It's just so absurd that how could you not see what actually happens in that movie?
And I think you're kind of saying how like Danny DeVito is sort of taking advantage of the naiveness of Arnold Schwarzenegger's character, but it's in this very like, I'm trying to think if it was in the trailer or not, where Arnold Schwarzenegger's like, we're twins, can't you tell? And he's like, Danny DeVito's like, I totally see the resemblance, in this very like dry, mean-spirited way.
Of course, duh. And I also have to say too, with that movie, like, I like that Schwarzenegger's physicality isn't used in it's used in a comedic way versus how it's normally used.
Yeah. And I will say I can't think of who did the theme song, but I'm a total sucker for a theme song for a movie that includes the title of the song. And
it's an art form.
In the song, I can't think of who wrote it, but the chorus is Twins, the magic just never ends.
Whew. Dang. Well, maybe we should cover that.
I'm not against it.
Okay. Let's think about that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for that, Justin.
Hey, I'm here to help.
Bring some twins in.
Yeah. Well, this is going to bring us to really one of my favorites of the podcast, and that is you giving me some information on the beloved Bill Murray. So without further ado.
Chicks dig me because I rarely wear underwear, and when I do, it's usually something unusual.
I think I need a root canal. I'm sure I need a long, slow root canal.
You gonna come and shake my monkey tree again? Oh, what does that old queen know? She didn't even show.
Hey, this is so scrumptious. Is this hand shut?
The flowing robes, the grace, all striking.
That was fun.
I can only think of 2 military-type movies that Billy's been in, the most recently being The Monuments Men and 1981 Stripes. But for today, I'm going to talk about the latter. So in 1993, Billy did an interview and said this about Stripes. I'm still a little queasy that I actually made a movie where I carry a machine gun, but I felt if you're rescuing your friends, it was okay. The movie captured what it was like to be on an army base. It was cold, you had to wear the same green clothes, you had to do a lot of physical stuff, you got treated pretty badly, and there was pretty bad coffee. Though still about military folk, the tone of Stripes is completely different from the experience of Predator, obviously. But these 2 movies sustain themselves on the friendship between the characters. I know I've talked to you about this, Justin, but the relationship and unspoken bond that exists between Billy and Harold Ramis will always tug at my heart. There's a lot to unpack in their relationship throughout the years, but for right now, we're just going to stick to the Stripes era. Billy agreed to Stripes only a few weeks before it was scheduled to be actually shooting. One stipulation though, Harold Ramis had to be cast as his best friend, his counterpart, the straight man that would anchor Billy's almost 80% of ad-libbing in the film. He also knew he could give a little bit of helpful suggestions to Harold on some of the rewriting for the script. And when you have 2 actors who know each other so well, how to bounce off one another, it only makes sense that they would, be the reason that the entire movie works so well. And there was one scene that was deleted from the theatrical release of Stripes that will always make me see that bond between the 2. However, Ivan Reitman felt like the accidental LSD trip performed by Harold really didn't fit the movie all too well, but it's also one of my favorites. It's also really easy to see why the film was originally intended to be a Cheech and Chong movie after this drug trip. What I appreciate in particular about this deleted drug trip scene is that the roles of Harold and Billy are totally reversed. While Harold is tripping on acid, Billy has to be the straight man in charge and figure out a way out of this accidental predicament that these 2 have found themselves in, where they're captured by Colombian rebels, of course. The scene eventually ends with a classic Murray moment involving Billy getting the Colombian rebels into a singing frenzy while drinking some liquor that's now been infused with all of the remaining acid tabs that Harold had, some 30 doses or so, nothing big. And then naturally the 2 escape captivity. It's a extremely great departure from the main plot of the film, but it's easy to see why it was cut out. For me, though, it's a terrific Billy and Harold aside that shows how cute these 2 can really be together. I know that I'll talk more about their friendship in future podcasts, but for right now, I'm just going to end it here. If you're curious, you can definitely see this clip on the deleted scenes of Stripes, the extended cut. I don't know have you seen this before, Justin?
I don't think I have.
No? It's worthwhile.
I'm always up for an LSD tripping scene in a movie, though. They don't really exist anymore.
Yeah, it's true. It's fun to see this scene in particular just because Harold Ramis is not usually the guy out of control, while Bill Murray's the one that's like, we gotta deal with this situation right now, and okay, we're just gonna move forward from here.
Yeah, there's always something that I always end up checking out every time you do one of these. So
I love that you haven't seen that clip.
I haven't. Actually, Stripes, out of all the Bill Murray movies that I enjoy, I think I've seen that one maybe the least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's at its core, I feel like it's the essence of what's great about him, because it's very dry, but it's also obviously a very comedic movie, but has a lot of like classic Murray type humor.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we're almost out of time here for the podcast. Again, I'll just say I think Predator is really an excellent action film, and what a 1-2 punch by a director of doing Predator following up by Die Hard. I mean, it's just sort of like a
way to go. Really
like cemented John McTiernan's legacy as, you know, the premier action go-to director.
Mm-hmm. So for our next podcast, we're gonna switch gears a little bit. We're going to do a straight up comedy this time, and we're going for John Hughes's Weird Science.
I like this choice. I like that we're kind of we're bouncing around the spectrum of genres,
mm-hmm.
and I love Weird Science. So that'll be coming up next. And if you've been catching these, if you've been sticking with us so far, we can't thank you enough for listening. If you want to,
thank you.
If you want to contact us with a comment or suggestion, you can reach us at don'tpushpausepodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at Don't Push Pause Podcast.
You can also find us on Facebook and also at don'tpushpausepodcast.com.
And I'd also, again, like to thank Matt Pace, who does our original theme music, and Mary Timmel, who does our intro. A lot of thanks to them for helping us get this thing going on.
Brilliant babies.
But yeah, until next time, I'm Justin Johnson.
And I'm Lindsay Reber.
Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you so much.